My son is hungry. Playful, curious, loud, and always hungry. Food is at the forefront of motherhood. Sensing an internal alarm every time I hear about food shortages, possible famine, and supply chain collapse, I wonder what his childhood will hold. We weren't rich growing up, but we were never hungry. It was easy to turn a blind eye when I was young and irreverent, but as a parent, I need some answers. And if not answers, then at least some options. This summer, our family went on a quest towards food security. We didn't want to wait to find out the hard, hungry way. While food is still abundant, we took a walk in the land of milk and honey and discovered some local, innovative sources right here in the Fraser Valley of BC.
It's all organic. There's no pesticides, no chemicals of any kind. What we're doing is a no-till method. So what that means is that we aerate the soil with a broad fork. It's just a big fork that you stand on and pull back, and it aerates the soil a bit. And then we add about 3 inches of compost each season. So what we're trying to do is get rid of the weeds. So we just put a really thick layer of compost on top, and that suffocates the weeds and it feeds the plants. We get that locally. We source the compost from neighboring farms, and then we mulch heavily with hay, which comes off of our field here beside us. And that means we don't need to use any herbicides or pesticides. I'm experimenting a bit with some additives that are natural. So we have chickens on the farm, and I make apple cider vinegar from the orchard, and I use the apple cider vinegar to extract the calcium from the chicken eggs, and that's added to the garden as well. So a few things like that, like different preparations that help keep the garden soil active, full of good microbes and nutrients. We've had chard leaves that would cover your body. They're so large. We've had romaine lettuce heads that come out like that. So the ground is very fertile. We're also next to the Fraser River, which means this is a lot of silt that's come off the Fraser in this area. And that's very fertile.
This land is so rich that we get these massive plants. I was harvesting beans here. I remember last year, this one bush bean, one plant had 300 beans on it. It was ridiculous.
We have a huge challenge in BC as far as farmland is concerned. There's only 3% of the land which is viable, and about half of that is not being farmed. There's a lot of land that is owned privately as a commodity. So land for farming is not affordable for people who want to farm it. One of the solutions, we feel, is to actually farm it as a community. Recently, I've been calling myself a guiding elder. I'm guiding Foodlands Cooperative to secure land for community use. We're focusing on anywhere in British Columbia where there is a community group that would like to provide food security for their community by gaining access to land that will then be productive in terms of either foraging or farming the land for the local community. So that's where people getting into regenerative agriculture, I think, is a really important direction for us to go.
I grow a wide variety of vegetable seeds or food seeds and a lot of medicinal herb seeds. Western medicinal herbs, Ayurvedic medicinal herbs, Chinese medicinal herbs, and indigenous medicinal herbs. I have, I would say, probably 120 varieties that I'm growing for seed this year. In total, I have about just under 200 varieties that I maintain for seed. I pretty much grow using organic techniques, moving towards more regenerative agricultural techniques. So basically, regenerative agriculture is really taking care of the soil, because soil is such an important part of growing anything. The microbial content, the nutrient content of the soil is super important. What is now called conventional agriculture, which I and others call industrial agriculture, the soil is just not being treated very nicely at all.
Some of the land, of course, that has been treated as a commodity has been mined, and it can only produce if there's massive chemicals are added to it or pesticides added to it. Our farm, which has been going for 40 years, has been regenerating all that time. We don't tear the trees down, we don't drain the swamp areas, we work with nature. You know, basically regenerative agriculture is just that. You regenerate the soil. You don't sustain it because we're not at a place of sustaining it now that's going to be viable or healthy. So we need to do things that will bring back the health of the soil. Some people think of it as being no-till. That's one tool and technique for regenerative, is not to over-till the soil and destroy the structure of the soil. But it's not the only thing. And organic farmers for years have been regenerating by actually growing cover crops on it and fixing nitrogen, and there's crop rotations and all the things that traditionally and classically have been done to make sure that that soil stays viable. You have to put back into the soil what you take out. Indigenous people say you need to be in reciprocal relationship with the land. That means that whatever you do benefits the land as well as it benefits you. And then the land gives to you and you take care of the land. So that reciprocity is really important, and regeneration is part of that reciprocity.
Hydroponics, that would be growing with water and without soil. The substrate that you see here in front of me is pretty much the only organic matter beyond the plant itself that you would see in our system. And then we supply all of the nutrients and the environment that it needs through the hydroponic system. So all the nutrients are in the water and there's no soil involved. This substrate is a mixture of peat moss and coconut coir. They look like little chocolate brownies and they can't fall apart. So there's nothing that's gonna come off. It's just gonna stay in this kind of really great shape. There's all these natural pores in there, which is great for oxygen, for the roots.
We're an ag tech company, and we develop commercial scale automated indoor growing systems. One, our original cubic farm technology, it grows food for people. So leafy greens, salad products, things like that, in a very automated, controlled way. That reduces the amount of energy that you need and maximizes every cubic foot of space, thus the name Cubic Farms. And then a few years ago, we actually acquired another technology called HydroGreen. And HydroGreen is a commercial scale live green animal feed growing technology that literally lets you grow better than grazing land fodder indoors, anywhere on earth, so that you can feed your beef cows and dairy cows.
We've got one HydroGreen machine that is 1,200 feet, which then can grow the same as 30 acres of land. So for some people to understand that, that is 17 soccer fields.
Within HydroGreen, the system is already fully automated. You literally press a button, the machine will seed itself, automated growing, lighting, watering, and after 6 days, you'll press a button and that machine will automatically harvest itself. We've developed a sizer that will chop up that feed. It falls onto a conveyor belt, takes it out to the farm's feed wagon, then it's delivered to the herd. I think indoor farming technologies really contribute to the future sustainability of the planet. If we need to create at least twice as much food over the next few decades, I don't know where we're getting the land and the water from.
Nobody else is coming. We need to take care of ourselves. And so this is our opportunity. How can BC, with the use of BC technology and BC farms, how can we maximize what we're doing here to take care of our own local communities?
And it feels like we are in a spaceship.
It can feel that way. The technology can be overwhelming, but it's really quite simple when you break it down.
Well, we're sealed off to the environment, right? For a reason, though, because the environment can be harsh at times, especially here in North America.
Recently, in this area in BC, we had the flood that washed out the Coquihalla, which inhibited the food trucks to be able to supply produce to areas of Kelowna. We have a farmer partner in Armstrong that's nearby, and during that time, when no trucks could get through. The Armstrong farm was one of the only farmers in the area that could supply fresh produce during that time because, of course, it was winter.
You're much less susceptible to disease and pests and storms and all of the things that really challenge farming, especially in a time of extreme climate change. Growing locally isn't just more efficient, it's more predictable and reliable, and it mitigates against all these risks.
So we can go from a seed to feed. It takes 6 days. We're using 5% of the water, and even the power to harvest compared to being out in a field. A field, you would have to go and use diesel trucks to go and do that. And so it has a positive environmental impact on the amount of gasoline and diesel that's used as well. Yeah, we call our robotic milker Robbie. Robbie gets to become the employee of the month every month because he works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So what we end up doing is we're getting to watch Robbie doing his job. And the cows come in, they can come when they want. We've got some cows that are very structured and they'll come 2-3 times a day at almost the exact same time, and they will get milked. We have other cows that kind of float in and out, kind of on their own mood. We'll get milked 2, 3, maybe up to 6 times a day, depending on how much milk they're producing, where they are on that bell curve. Cows get to come in and they get to have a treat. They're rewarded for their work when they come in, and they get to have a snack, which is oats and molasses. And while they're enjoying their snack, Robbie is doing the milking. It takes about 6 minutes, and then the cows can go back to their barn life of drinking water, listening to classical music, laying in a bed, and going to the all-you-can-eat buffet. So it's a pretty good life if you're a cow.
So would you call yourself a farmer?
I like to think of myself as a farmer. I'm completely protected as a worker by the elements, just as the plants are as well. So I don't have to crawl on my hands and knees in order to transplant our lettuce or to harvest. Because of the crop motion technology, the crop comes to me. I'm able to just stand and move around as I feel comfortable, and it's always just kind of ergonomically friendly.
You also don't have to be worried about getting laid off when it's winter because you can still farm in the winter.
Absolutely. There's job security in having crop produced 12 months out of the year.
What would you say to people that think that the automation of farming is taking away jobs?
I would agree. It is taking away jobs, but it's taking away the jobs that I wouldn't want to have to do every day, and I don't want anyone else to have to either.
The global pandemic underscored how fragile the workforce is on farm. Many farmers lost crops, not because the crop failed, they weren't able to get it off the field or off the tree So we need automation on farms.
This is going to save you hours and hours of time each time you propagate, I guess.
Absolutely. If you were to seed one by one, you would likely not want to stick around for very long because it would just take so long. So here we can seed 3 plug trays at once. I can write protocols that control the temperature, the relative humidity, and the CO2 for the environment in each of our modules, and control how frequently and how often our dosing is on, and how long we want the lights on in a day.
So can you actually control this at home?
I can.
Wow.
Yeah, so if I have an alarm or something that's going on, there's no need to come to the farm. I can look at my phone, check the environment, see how things are going remotely.
There have been tractors driving GPS in fields, fully automated without people, long before you've got a car driving around on the highway without anybody. So farming has always been innovative and cutting edge. And I would say to you that a farmer now is a software programmer, an engineer, a project manager, a logistics, installation, because farming in the future needs to mitigate against climate change. We can't be shipping things long distances. They've got to be able to grow locally 12 months a year. That means technology. Who's going to run that? Those farmers are participants in the technology industry as much as any other industry.
This production system doesn't have to rely on temporary foreign workers coming in from other places because it's not ethical if we really break it down. Let's increase the standard of the farmer so that more people enter farming and more people that are within our communities serving and feeding our communities.
When people ask me what I do, the first thing I usually say is I'm a farmer. Even though, I'm CEO of an ag tech company, I'm a farmer.
We're at a time and age where the farmer is looking a whole lot different. And so that family business that would have many farmers once upon a time. Those people aren't interested in being farmers. So what we need is agricultural technologies so that the family farm can stay and maintain as a family operation. Yeah, we've got a robot now that milks a cow. We can grow feed literally 24 hours a day inside of a building. We've got a milk delivery system that delivers milk to our calves 5 meals a day, and this is all done automated. What the great part is that for those who don't like to shovel manure and get all dirty that way, there's still those opportunities to be in agriculture because you're now the technician, you're the one who's doing the computer programming, you're the one who's replacing the pieces mechanically that are making up those robotic systems. It's a modern world, and we have got a way of doing it with less impact to the environment and, as I said before, keeping family farms sustainable. We had a farmer who was from northern BC who came and saw what was happening here and was very much traditional in the ways in which he had farmed and said, oh, we don't need these technologies. How we're on our farm, we're doing just fine. He was here with his daughter and his son who were looking at each other and literally were mumbling to each other after, we're gonna get this system when dad retires. And knowing that they weren't going to work as hard and stay on the farm the way that their dad has to, but instead, they have the flexibility to be able to manage their farm in a way where they can balance life and work for themselves and be able to do it in a way that has a positive impact for the environment, for their family, and for the animals on their farm. So they got it, yeah.
Before we get into things like technology to grow our food, which is sometimes the first thing people think about, for one reason is that technology brings investment and money. And I think that some of those techniques might be very well placed to grow a certain amount of our food, but what I want to see is young people getting back onto the farms and growing food. And growing them in ways, of course, that regenerate the soil. Growing it in ways that mean and place them in their right relationship with the land. And I know because we have so much land available that's not growing food. It's not a shortage of land. But we can feed ourselves. And we have a generation of people wanting to do that.
Labor is definitely an issue in organic growing systems because there's a lot of human management going on. Like weeding is a classic.
Right now there's a lot of weeding. Because we're an organic garden, there's a lot of very voracious weeds. Now, some of them are very edible, so we'll pull them out and we'll eat them. And then there's some planting, although most of the garden is planted out by now. You can see that it's pretty full. And then harvest. By the afternoon, we're pulling harvest boxes out. There's about 45 boxes that we pack. And then anybody who visits the farm also gets a bag of vegetables to go home with. So we might pack as many as 60 boxes. By the afternoon, we're done harvesting, we're done tasks. By about 4:30, 5 o'clock, people go down to the river, they go for hikes, play in the orchard, and then there's potluck. Every Saturday night there's a potluck. And the other aspect about the farm is not just the farm, but it's the social aspects.
Usually Saturday night there is a event. This could range from music, dance, to storytelling, yoga, and then different art projects, crafty things, games.
So there's about 40 to 50 people that come to Abundance Farm on a regular basis over the summer. And those 40 or 50 people are divided up into subgroups. So there's a pod of 5 or 6 families. And one family from each of the pods comes out each Saturday to help harvest. In the spring, of course, we help seed, weed, and all of that. And then in the fall, we're harvesting.
Most CAs that I'm aware of, you pay to be a member, and you may not even participate in the community part of it. You may just get the food because you've paid into it. But here, the idea is not so much about the money, it's about the community. The bottom line is the community.
For the folks that think, wow, it's quite a ways to drive to Agassiz, well, it's once a month and you're getting all of this fresh harvest every week. So how many months do you get harvest for, do you think?
Oh, we start at least in June or even late May. So May, June, July, August, September, and even into October. So it's about 5 months worth of harvesting. Early in the year, it's greens like kale and spinach. And now we're into the root vegetables.
So that's 20 weeks worth of food.
Yes.
After 3 weeks, you have this, and then in another 3 weeks, you have this. Well, not even 3 weeks, so a 5-week turnaround, and you have a full crop.
Yes, that's what we're dealing with here.
Wow.
It's pretty quick, and then you come out with this beautiful butter lettuce. This was harvested 5 days ago.
What? It looks picture perfect still.
All of our produce is harvested live, so you can see that I still have these beautiful white roots attached that just kind of get wrapped around the plug here and then put into the box, so it allows it to stay fresher longer.
Hydrogreen is very close to the same wheatgrass that you would have if you went to a Booster Juice or to a nutritional store. It's sweet, the cows know it. Yeah, they love it.
The nutrients and enzymes are so readily available to that animal that they're able to absorb them. We just did a beef study that showed feeding Hydrogreen to beef will result in about a 9% increase in weight gain and about a 5% feed efficiency. In other words, you can grow a larger animal quicker with less feed.
So one thing that we have in a lot of developing countries is community seed banks. The seed banks are literally banks where people deposit, they loan, they trade seeds. Seeds become currency. If you don't have seed security / sovereignty, then you don't have any food security.
So I'd like to introduce you to someone. Yeah. This is Percy. Percy is a persimmon tree, and Percy was the first thing we planted on the farm. We planted him as a collective, so we had a big circle gathering, we had a blessing, and then we developed, around Percy, we developed a medicine garden. So there's lots of different medicinal herbs, bee balm, mugwort, we have chamomile, comfrey, hollyhocks, kind of a mixture of medicines and flowers. And the intention is to use this as an educational opportunity for our community to understand the world of medicines as well. This is St. John's wort. So this has a lot of medicinal qualities to it. People use it for an antidepressant.
We have maybe 70 different types of vegetables in a half an acre garden. So when you have a lot of different varieties, what happens is that even in the worst case, if a disease attacks one of your varieties, it doesn't spread all across because they're all different plants and you use different methods. So it's not like industrial agriculture that you have a lot of one species and then if you get a disease, it takes everything over, right? So it is basically building biodiversity. Look at that forest, no one's putting pesticides on it, but because of the biodiversity, it's flourishing and it's so beautiful.
I think part of it is just really having that relationship with your food, tasting your food, appreciating your food, learning about it. What does it need to grow? What is it giving you? I think a lot of it comes down to that really interest in our food. And then from there, it grows.
In British Columbia, we have probably over 30 conservation charities, but the government does not see food land or food security as a charitable purpose. We applied for charitable status as Foodlands Cooperative and we were denied that status. And that status would have allowed us basically to take donations of land from people and be able to give them a tax receipt. So they denied charitable status. But I do know that there are lots of people out there that'd be willing to participate in a program that would put their land in trust. I get contacted every week with people wanting to do that.
I think it's important to look at indoor farming technologies as part of a solution, not the be-all, end-all. I think for high-volume salad products, it makes perfect sense. For live green animal feed, it's simply the best feed and it makes a lot of sense. So over time, you'll see more and more. I think the more expensive land gets, the more scarce water gets, the more people become sensitive as to where their food is coming from and what's the environmental footprint of that food. All of these things are going to combine to enable more investment and a greater success of growing more crops indoors over time.
You know, here in BC, a lot of our food is coming up from California and Mexico, yet we actually have a climate here where we can grow a lot of different things, a lot of different foods. Coastal BC has the climate where we can be growing year round. And that definitely is an area that I know farmers and growers are starting to explore here in BC is winter gardening and supplying a lot of the kales and greens throughout the winter. Because as I said, we have that climate here. We have an amazing climate for growing food.
I don't want to see our fertile farmland of the Fraser Valley be paved over for the sake of vertical farming. But what I want to see are vertical farms implemented in our existing infrastructure so that people can live where they work and eat what we produce in the land that we live in. If we're to consume food that's grown locally, then we're reducing the amount of driving hours, we're reducing the amount of time that it takes for our produce to get to us. So we're reducing the energy to store and keep the shelf life of our food, and the energy to bring the food to us. And at the end, we would be getting a fresher, more nutritious food at the grocery store.
There is such a thing as an ecosystem. There is such a thing as balance within an ecosystem. There are such things as pervasive chemicals and non-biodegradable chemicals, but we don't question those things. There is a field very near here that they're growing Brussels sprouts in a conventional farmer. And every time I go past that field, they're spraying it. And I know that they're using fertilizers, liquid fertilizers, but I also know that they're spraying it with insecticides and pesticides and herbicides. We're just told that these chemicals are innocuous. They're innocuous. They don't harm us, they're fine, they just go away. But what's being found more and more is that these chemicals are harmful, and they do bioaccumulate in organic tissues. And we are organic tissues. We're made up of organic tissues. It's just, it's just this craziness around believing that spraying something with all these chemicals, that we're not going to be ingesting those chemicals, and those chemicals are going to have an effect on us because we are part of that biological system. We're carbon-based living organisms as well as the plants.
Inside our dairy barn, we are able to scoop the poop with our poop Zamboni. It's scraping off the floors, and then it goes into our poop pit, and then from there it goes to our anaerobic digester. So our anaerobic digester heats up the manure to 37 degrees Celsius, and that helps extract the gases. Those gases are what's passed through a generator, and then that is how we can get electricity from manure. The simple version essentially is that we're using the waste, which we now see as a wasted resource, and are taking an opportunity to create electricity from it.
Food security is essential. If we don't think about it, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble in the future. So this has been on my mind for years, and that's why I've decided that I want to grow my own food so that I can make sure that I feed my own family. And it's a lot better if you're going to you can do a little farm, you could grow farm, but to do it together with a group of people is a lot easier, because then you can cultivate a larger piece of land, you can grow a larger variety of vegetables, and it just makes it easier. So that's kind of what we want to move forward, is to always be involved in some kind of farm project.
It's disturbing how inexpensive it is to eat poorly. When I see food, advertised at prices where I know I'm not sure how the farmer made any money on that, or this is a mass processed thing that might stave off hunger, but is it really nutritious? I think all of these things are part of food security. It's got to be reasonably priced, it's got to be healthy, and it's got to be always there no matter what.
When the pandemic hit and we saw the grocery store shelves disappear, the things that were stocked were anything local produced. So I think that's a big piece of what we produce ourselves in this region is really our security. If things shifted and changed and we couldn't bring in oranges from Florida and wheat from the Ukraine, wherever it's coming from, is that we really need to understand what we can grow for ourselves. So something like Abundance Community Farm, we can supply the vegetables for our families sort of from June to end of October. We're still giving out vegetables, but then we also do a lot of food preservation. So it can literally feed you year round.
I don't think I've ever thought of food sustainability as this is a purpose and this is something that I wanted. I came across, like you said, as a father who's looking at what can we put on the table that's safe for our family? How can I make my kids the healthiest kids that they can be? How can I make sure that my parents are eating food that's going to help them be part of our daily lives? With that in mind, now I'm understanding, wait, the answer is locally fresh food that is grown within its simplest terms here in BC. If I can choose between a head of lettuce that was grown here locally or something that's been bounced around in a truck from Mexico or California, I know which ones have the more minerals and vitamins, and I know which one is going to be healthier for my family.
I don't want to look at it as this ideal model that it will take care of everything. No, we still go buy bread and buy other things. But if things also happen, we have so much abundance and we can totally live on it. And even in winter, we have like a massive cellars full of food. So it's possible to really make a realistic dent to our food bill and to the cost of it while building resiliency and building community. That's, I think, is also, again, for me, it's a more fundamental shift in our culture that now we're related to what we eat and to the land and to the people. And that just helps us transition to a different type of lifestyle, changes our value system. The whole consumer world is driven by creating a false sense of belonging through products. It's like, oh, I have this latest cell phone, I have this latest thing, so now I'm part of this product. But when you're in community and you're sharing and sitting in a circle and playing music and dancing and working with the land and with the kids, then that doesn't really matter anymore. Like the value system changes.
We have one sales cycle going with a potato farmer that is interested in our technology so that future generations of his family can continue to farm on that land. That farmer is convinced that because of climate change and challenges around drought and extreme weather, that they will not be able to continue farming for the next 100 years like they have for the previous 100. When you mitigate against all of these things with indoor farming, now future generations can continue to farm that land.
I think youth and the younger generation are understanding the importance of knowing where their food comes from. We as agriculturists need to regain the trust. This is a trusted food source and you can trust what is in it and where it comes from. We blindly just ate whatever was in the bag and just didn't know what was on the back of the ingredients label, but ate it anyways. We're now learning that, hey, these things have an impact on my longevity and on my health.
The values that I'm instilling in children are the values of collective living, collective working, that we together can create something, that we can grow food. This understanding that the food that we eat doesn't come from the grocery store. It comes from the ground. And the more that we can actually grow our own food, and I want my kids to, when they grow up, to grow their own food so that they can be farmers too. My mom brought me out into the garden and taught me how to garden when I was a kid, and I always remember that.
That's, I think, really the medicine that we need to come together as people and be able to work together and enjoy and heal and celebrate and mourn and, like all those deeper emotional pieces that, we've lost.
I don't even know if our kids understand supply chains. We've been so lucky. We've grown up in a world where we've had everything. We've had the safety, we've had abundance, we've had convenience. I think that as those kids get older, this kind of learning will help them take better care of the land that they have access to in their home and how to use it better and how to take care of ourselves. Now I live in the city, I don't have a lot of space, but I garden in pots. I'm growing food, and I've learned to do it because I've been here. So I think if your parents are learning to do it out here, you're growing up with it. It brings the country into the city, right?
We really should have dozens of these kind of farms out in the communities like in Agassiz, Abbotsford, Langley. And the kids get their hands in the dirt and help pull it out and participate so they know where their food comes from, which is important.
I think start small, honestly. You don't need to have 20 acres to grow your own food. It's about developing a relationship with your food and really having an understanding of what it takes to grow it, where it comes from, and then, you know, don't try to grow everything yourself. There's lots of other people that you can do exchanges with. So it's not only about food, it's about community. That's another huge asset in food security, is having relationships.
So as an elder who've been farming like for the last 30 to 40 years, I want to see this land be passed on to the next generation, not just one generation, but 7 generations to come. In order to do that, we have to stop seeing land as a commodity, to be bought and sold to the highest bidder, and to really see it as precious, as sacred, as a resource for our food security. I mean, we treat parks that way. We don't hesitate about that. But we still see farming as an economic enterprise that is not a social or a community enterprise. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is changing our attitude towards that. I do think that BC is leading the way in terms of local food. And we have a government that's actually put together a program for food hubs, so that food can, from local growers, be aggregated, can be added value to it. We can start small businesses, and entrepreneurship is on the rise with local food products. And I think that this is happening globally as well. And this is a trend that I support. And I don't have a lot of years left to support it, but I consider it to be my legacy.
So what do we do with all this newfound inspiration? We put it into action. With a little help from YouTube and the local hardware store, our second bathroom is now an abundant hydroponic garden. The patio has produced some delicious tomatoes, kale, and basil. We sprout clover and alfalfa for quick green turnarounds. We support Cubic Farms' always local brand when in the grocery store. There were a few entertaining trips to the farmers markets to meet some of our local growers. We stockpile more whole foods and practice quality over convenience. We're planning on participating at Abundance Farms in Agassiz next year. Xander is going to be enrolled in the local farm school for kids this summer break in South Surrey. The next step is optimizing our systems. I'm looking for the best organic seeds to grow, learning efficient means of long-term food storage, finding alternative emergency power sources, swapping in more energy-efficient systems, and giving preference to local food labels. We've learned that there's no magic bullet, and that anything genuinely impactful will literally take a village. Fortunately, we live in one of the most abundant villages in the world. The lower mainland of BC has some of the world's richest resources, the kindest people, and the most beautiful oceans. It's been here all along.
That's a wrap, that's a wrap, that's a wrap. All together, one desire, here in our hands. We're united, survivors through all the pain. Such a feeling tonight that we'll never regret. Promise and heart.